Hello everyone and welcome back to our JRPG series. In the last episode we worked on our saving and loading system, and in this episode we're going to work on our last action menu entry, which is techniques. So in this episode we're going to work on the UI side of things to get our techniques showing, such as still, for the players. So let's get started. So this is something that you probably have already figured out how we're going to do, because it's so similar to everything else we've done with the techniques. So we're going to go to the UI here and go to widgets, and for this we're going to do a duplicate of the magic ability and magic windows. So magic window, right click, duplicate, and this is going to be called technique window, and we're going to duplicate the ability slot as well. That'd be technique window slot. Let's start with the technique window. So in here, we're going to change this text to say select technique. And we're not going to have a contents to this, because it's going to be just a straight list of abilities that don't have categories. So we're going to take out these two buttons here. So I'm going to take out the that's there, and get rid of the vertical box as well. And we're going to take the spell list and put it outside of the magic menu switcher by right click on the magic menu and do replace with child. There it is. So the spell list, we're going to change the name to technique list. That's there. Their name. Okay, that's all good. So now we go to the graph here and we set up the differences here. So the return is going to be basically the same, so that's not a problem. We just get rid of the active widget index. We don't need to do that. And we just get rid of this stuff too, and just put in full return selected. And then on the target chosen, which is going to be based upon when we populate the target chosen list, that doesn't count for this, so we get rid of that. Actually, don't need to populate target list to get rid of that. So these commands don't exist anymore, so we can get rid of these. Okay. But instead of getting rid of all of them, what I'm going to do is change this one to not be on clicked, but rather be on the pre-construct. So I'm going to add this up here to the pre-construct. Clear the children from the list. And then we're going to go and get the units combat component and then get their techniques. So that's not going to be the abilities here. Let's set that up over on our abilities folder. New subfolder for this. This will be techniques. And inside there, we're going to have the technique base. Class, actor, technique, base. In the technique base, we're going to have the couple of variables. We're going to have the name, which can be a text field. We're going to have the description, and we're also going to have is friendly, we'll call it, and that'd be a boolean. So that means if we're going to target friendly characters or not, we'll be using that. And that may be it. Name, description is friendly. That'll do for now. We'll compile and save that one and close that, and go to our combat component. And like how in our abilities here we've got black magic abilities and white magic abilities and projectile class, we're going to add another array of abilities to this, and we're going to put on techniques. That'll be a technique base class, and that'll be an array. And I'll put in my abilities subsection like that and save that. Then back on the technique window, we're going to get rid of this white magic abilities, and from the combat component, get the techniques. And this is now going to go into this for each loop. So just need to disconnect the array element, plug that in there, and the completed here, we don't need to do the switch up. That. And now we just need to set up the technique slot. So let's go over to technique slot in our UI and change the way this works. So let's change the name of this one. So that'd be technique name text, technique selection button, and go to the graph. This ability is going to be called technique, and it's going to be of the type technique base class reference. Change variable type. This will break a few things. That's okay. And we're going to go into here. So disconnect this and plug in technique into here, and that will change this. So disconnect these. And the format text for this is just the name of this, so we don't want to do any formatting for this. We can just get rid of that. Put the name in there. So then we are what are we doing now? We are then doing game mode current toasted at MP. We don't want to do that, so we're going to take this off. The techniques won't cost MP, as they're usually weak things. Do something. I mean, you can make them cost MP if you really want to, but now that'd be it. So that'll do this. Then on when we click it, we don't want to do the call ability chosen. We're going to change that. That'd be asking for the technique and technique base. That'd be a class reference. You can probably see the pattern here compared to the items and the magic. So they're all pretty much the same. Technique chosen, and plug in the technique into there. Part of that. What's gone wrong here? Oh yeah, hovered. So we'll just disconnect that and change on hovered here to be doing the technique. Just say technique and all that. Refresh this, and you can plug that in. Refresh this one as well. Both say technique. File and save. Okay, so let's go back to our technique window, and I'm going to change this to the technique window slot, and that's going to ask for the technique. So I'm going to drag that across from the array element. And that's going to be added to the child still. The bind event here is not going to be this event, so we're going to get rid of this and do bind event technique chosen. That in. And we're also going to bind event on hovered. Drag that out again. Bind event on hovered. On the ability chosen target, that's going to be changed to technique base class reference, and we'll change that to say technique. And on hovered here again, technique base class reference technique, and we're now going to bind these events to these nodes here. Compile, and we should now be able to choose our matching events from here. I guess they're not matching. Hold on. Or we delete them. Delete them. So, okay, cool. So on here, we need to create the events that these things will call. So we're going to go create matching event, and this is be for the ability chosen target. So we'll call this one ability chosen. And here we're going to drag out ability chosen target and call it, and plug in the technique. And then on that, fix that one. Then this one we're going to create another matching event, and this would be on hovered technique, and we're going to drag out the on hovered. All that. They should all match up just fine. Okay, so that's the technique window. Now we need to add that to our battle HUD. Go to here, and we're going to add our technique window to this. And this is going to have the exact same settings as the item and magic window. So we're going to go on a new animation, well, and do show technique window. First of all, let's get into position. So click on the magic window. We're going to copy all this information here. So we'll copy the size first, copy that. Click on here, paste that. And going to copy all this stuff across. Okay, make sure you've got all that set up correctly, including the visibility and render opacity. And then go to the animation. And on here, we're going to add a track for the technique window. I'm going to go to my show magic menu. And in here, we're going to copy the magic window tracks. Here, select those, copy. Go to technique window and paste those tracks onto here. So, and then I'm going to go to the action commands, copy this whole thing, and paste this in here too. Okay, so the technique window comes in like this. Technique. Okay. So that'll do that. Hit compile and save this, and go to the graph now. On the graph, we need to set up the functionality to bind the event for the click. So on the construct of our action commands, so let's go to action commands and go to techniques, do on techniques command, add on clicked, and we're going to add another dispatcher here. So we're just going to duplicate this one, make a new one. Of course, one show techniques menu, and we're going to call that on here. Okay, save, compile, close that, and go back to our battle HUD. And on the construct, we're going to add the final menu option here: bind event to technique menu. And for this, we're going to make the same thing as we've seen on our item menu, basically. So we're going to make a custom event called show technique window. Oh, didn't do it. Hold on. Show technique. Okay. Oh wait, maybe it's too much. Show techniques. We'll call it show techniques. There we go. And yep, same sort of stuff we've done before here. So we play the animation forward, bind the events, and so forth. So take the animation out, show technique window, get from there. We're going to do play animation forward, plug that in, and then we're going to take out the technique window, then bind event to ability chosen target, and plug that in. And the event for this, we're going to do bind, custom event, and this will be called technique. We'll call it use technique, actually. Use technique. And also need to bind turn selected and make that a custom event. Well, turn, and like we've done here, we need to also bind the event for hovered. So do there, bind event to on hovered. Okay, and I'm going to drag from there, do a custom event to show info. Okay, so let's go through this. So on the return, we're basically going to do the exact same we've got here. So we're going to tell it to play it in reverse and then tell it to clear the show information. So on the return here, take the show technique window and do play animation reverse. And then call that function show information and leave it blank. On the show info, again, similar to what we've got here, we want to check that it's a valid class first. So valid, put that into a branch. Then from there, we're going to get the class defaults. And we just want the description from this. So hide. I can hide all these. Okay, we'll just use description here. And we'll take this into the show information. And paste that back in here. And description will go into the top one. Bottom one be left blank. So it's exactly the same as we got here. Nothing special. So that's that. We then need to do the on the chosen use technique option here. So similarly, we've got to show targets who we're going to target with this thing. And that targets are going to change the population of the list based upon whether or not we're looking for a enemy or a friendly. So on use targets, we're going to call use technique. We're going to use show targets. Okay, and then you're going to not set the item here exactly. We're going to do a set technique. So go to our target window. Where is it? There it is. And we're adding technique to it. This would be a technique class. Base. Class reference. File and save that. And then on here we can do target window. Set technique. Got a technique there. And then we'll take to populate target list. Okay, so exactly the same as we've got there. What we have to do is just drag out a show information and leave it blank. So now we're going to go to populate target list, and like we've got these two being set up for ability and item, we also want to do the same for the techniques. So we're going to move this down, and I'm going to add another pin and move this one down to this pin here. And for this, we're going to take out the technique get, and we're going to convert it to a validated get. Enter then too. And yep, so it basically be doing this. So on the technique here, we're going to get the class defaults. And we've got is friendly. And we're going to put that into our use enemy units variable. So we're going to do use enemy units. Set. Plug it into is valid. And if it is valid, we want it to set the enemy units to be true when is friendly is false. So do is friendly and do not, and that'll be use enemy units. Compile, and that's it. Okay, so we're then going to go to the event graph in the target window, and we've got on here when we click the return button on here, we're going to clear the technique, like we have done here. All that and save it. So now let's set up a basic one we're going to be making in the next episode. We're going to abilities, techniques, and I'm going to create a child blueprint of this. And we call this one steal, which will be used for stealing money or anything from the character. So in here, I'm going to set up the name here, steal. Description, steal some money from the target enemy. Compile and save. Okay. We're then going to go to the combat component of, let's do Faye. And add her to this. So I'm going to go to our combat component. Go to the abilities here, techniques. We're going to add the steal technique. Compile and save that. We're then going to go back to our battle unit HUD. And on here, we've got the show technique menu, and we need to take it to create event and choose the show technique event and hit compile there, clean that up. Okay, so that is going to be calling this target stuff, and when we click on the target slot, apologies, back to here, target slot, it's going to call the target chosen here. And here we're doing a check here for ability, and it's doing magic command. If that is not the case, then it's going to look for item. If that's not the case, we want to look for the technique. Drag that out and do get, right click, validate get, put that into it's not valid. And if it's not valid, it'll go to attack. And if it is valid, we'll go to technique command on the combat component. Let's go to the combat component. And this is going to have the technique command. Just put a comment around this stuff we've done for the items. See, items. And we're going to make another thing here and do custom event or technique command. And that's going to take in one input. It can be the technique we want to use. So technique and technique base. Class reference. So again, very similar to what else we've done here. We're going to take the camera and do that work with the camera. We're then going to take the technique here, and we're going to get class defaults and look at the as friendly and put that into a branch. Okay, and if it's true, we're going to make another event, which I'm going to put on this side this time, and do custom event. And this is going to be saying past technique on enemy, and we're going to have another one, custom event, cast technique on friendly. Back to the center here, and we're going to call these casts here. We're going to do cast technique on enemy, and that will go into the bottom one, sorry. And we're going to do cast technique friendly. And these things need to have the input for the technique, so put that on there too. Technique, and here too. File that, and then go over to our commands middle, and we're going to add our techniques to this. Okay, file and save that. Right, so I got technique command on there. So we go back now to target window, and go to is valid and search for our technique command. Oh, that's going to come from, first of all, our combat component, technique command, and plug that into is valid technique input there. Now go up to call return selected. Okay, so a bit of a web, but that's it. That's all of them done. We've got all 4 options now. Compile and save that. The last thing we need to do here is go to the unit battle HUD, and right at the top where we are setting unit to the magic window and to the target window here, we want to also do the same for our technique window. So drag out technique window, that, and I'm going to set unit, and that's going to be set to the same unit that's on. So let's test that out now, and Faye should have the still. So the reason we got an issue with it not showing is, I believe it's because the pre-construct for the technique window is happening before it has a chance to get the unit here. So it's returning is not valid. So what we need to do is basically make it call this as a function rather than anything else. So we'll make this a custom event and we call this one fetch techniques, and we'll put that into there. File. Then we're going to go to the unit battle HUD, go to where we're showing the techniques window, which is down here somewhere. It is. And so when we play the animation forward, what we're actually going to be doing as well is telling our target window here to fetch techniques. Okay, file and save that. So let's see if that's fixed that issue. So now Faye has the steal technique. Okay. At the moment, doing nothing on it. Won't do anything. Okay. So we go back there. And that's it. And there we have it. We've now got our last action option on the screen in the form of techniques. In the next episode, we'll work on the actual functionality of our steal technique to steal items from our enemies. You can watch the next episode right now over on patreon.com/Ryan Laley. You can find all my episodes early from just $1 a month. Massive thank you to all my patrons and YouTube members for their continued support. Make sure you're subscribed and I'll see you all next time. Bye everyone.